I call Fletcher Tabato.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Minister Bennett spoke of the plan that is working. Sir, the trust assumed in this phrase is huge, given no one has seen the plan. Mr Bennett has certainly not seen the plan. Sir, it is an example of the arrogance of this national government. Everyday New Zealanders are losing their trust in this government at a rapid rate, sir. For all New Zealanders, trust has been eroded on all number of issues. For example, the trust that was lost on the Countering Terrorist Fighters legislation, the trust that was lost on the oversight of the GCSB, where the person in charge of holding them to account actually reports back to the minister. So the government made promises in a by-election which has no intention of keeping. And then there is the biggest undermining of New Zealanders' trust with the TPP arrangement, sir, and New Zealanders having to rely on the American political system to see them through to the other side of this negotiation safely. So the Minister of Tertiary Education, coming back to appropriations, Stephen Joyce, was forced to admit that the sums provided for in the last budget, to be fair, were misleading. The government's budget announcement of a further $113 million for tertiary education, credible exaggeration. Mr Speaker, the actual increase was a mere $7 million. New Zealand now ranks because of the lack of appropriations, and perhaps this could have been an opportunity laid out in this legislation for a capital injection, but no. New Zealand still ranks at the bottom, or near the bottom, of OECD rankings in terms of tertiary education funding per student. This is what the national government has provided New Zealanders, looking to better themselves, and instead of trying to increase productivity through appropriations, through a clever budget, instead no money, Mr Speaker. We know from research that there is a positive correlation between people using online technology and business success. But yet again, there is a divide between the haves and the have-not. Again, the 2014-15 budget didn't address it, and sir, there's nothing in this appropriations legislation which deals with a significant problem where the timing of the issue could not be more important. What we're seeing, sir, is a rollout of broadband that is not effective. That we are seeing a rollout of broadband where those in our rural communities, those in the regions, are missing out right now. But this has not been addressed. What we know, sir, is that the rollout of the broadband is a conversation that has been had now, and I use this example, sir, because hard data has just been released from MYOB analysis, where rural communities have the lowest engagement levels in online services. Only 10% of rural businesses have websites. 73% of them have no presence whatsoever. The logical conclusion of that is that they are missing out on revenue. Rural operators are significantly more unhappy with the speed and reliability of their service. On the matter of transport, sir, the Minister spoke out yesterday about increased spending in the regions. Our New Zealand First spokesman, Dennis O'Rourke, described the Minister's words as perhaps not ringing quite true. Mr Speaker, the reality is if you adjust what was being spent in the 2008 and 2009 year period for inflation in real terms, land transport spending in the 2014-15 budget was actually less in Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Northland, Bay of Plenty, Manawatu, Whanganui and the West Coast. In Northland, NZTA investment in local road maintenance this year, for example, is 14.6 million, significantly lower than the 15.5 million average over the last 7 years. Even the 5.8 million investment in local road improvements is significantly lower than the 7-year average of near on 10 million. Mr Speaker, whānau order has been identified as an issue in this appropriations legislation, and New Zealand First has consistently raised concerns over whānau order spending. Scrutiny by the Auditor General has clearly shown it has fallen seriously short of expectation. These appropriations have ignored official findings. The Auditor General's report found absolutely no evidence that good value for money has come out of the $140 million so far spent on whānau order, Sir. Sir, it is clear that this government has got it wrong for our regions. Social services are disappearing in the regions under this government. Under National, there has been a flow of regional closures, including services to veterans and youth provided by the Salvation Army. And recently, Relationship Aotearoa was forced to shut down. It had branches throughout New Zealand in the region, Sir. Government support for social services has fallen away. It is clear in this appropriations bill. It was clear in the budget. It has fallen away under its investment approach, widely touted over the past 6 years, but it is not working, Sir. There's little in the way of increased funding for police. After 5, 6 years, another frozen budget in real terms. Too many small, rural, isolated police stations from the far north to the deep south are squeezed for staffing, Sir. Mr. Speaker, I put it to this House on behalf of many concerned New Zealanders. Our electricity prices have been rising constantly, and there was nothing in the budget, and there is nothing to be discussed today, unfortunately for the people of New Zealand, in the appropriations. There has been nothing from this government in their policies that even recognises the growing depth of real despair from what is more and more everyday New Zealanders, or as coined recently, the working poor. And yesterday we hear that West Coasters and Northlanders are facing higher charges, proposed charges, by the Electricity Authority. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First asserts that big business will be the winner with lower electricity line charges per year, and households will be missing out. Here we seem to be seeing a case for the building of corporate welfare, particularly for foreign-owned companies, surely a hallmark of this national government. How on earth are regions like Northland ignored in this budget, in this bill, and the West Coast supposed to develop when the likely price increase will be massively greater than inflation? In fact, it's unfortunate that what we see going forward is that the lines companies didn't actually demand a price increase, but we know they'll be blamed for it anyway. The resultant increased electricity line charges will then be used by right-wing elements, especially in Auckland, to demand the breakup of energy consumer trusts, thus enabling private interests to gain access to the trust's billions of dollars of assets. So I conclude by putting it to this government that our regions, our small businesses, our farmers, the elderly and the working mum and dad will be paying a higher price to bolster private profit. These are the very same people, Sir, who have been ignored by this budget, by these appropriations, and so New Zealand First cannot support this today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I